But for 15 years, as I got to know him, that he had 15 years that he felt in his heart that God was calling him to make this movie. And he knew what would happen if he did this movie. And eventually, they used the surfing movie as a front, and he started talking about Jesus this and Jesus that, different thing, and I'm looking at him thinking about Jesus on a surfboard.
Right? He walks on water, but he might not surf, right?
Yeah. So I said, you want me to play Jesus? And he says, yeah. And the next day, he called me at home, and he tried to talk me out of it. And, that's how it is. You make a commitment to Christ that you're going to do that, and then the devil comes in and sifts you out. And all of a sudden, I shouldn't have had this meeting. I shouldn't have done this. I've done all these things, and people will find out eventually that this is the kind of person I am, and I can't do this movie. I'm the wrong guy. I shouldn't direct this. And so he called me. He says, if you do this movie, you may never work in this town again. I don't want to be responsible for that. And I felt the fear because I thought of all the nice things that I have, and I realized that God had got me into this business, that my talent came from God, not from man. And so I said, look, man, we're all called to carry our own cross. If you don't pick up and carry your cross, you will be crushed by the weight of it. He got real quiet on the phone, and I said, oh my. He said, what? I said, I just realized my initials are JC, and I'm 33 years old. And he says, God, you're freaking me out. And hung up the phone.
Yeah, enough said, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a, well, yeah. He what can you say, I mean, kind of portrays the lifestyle that he's in now. But, as you built a relationship with him and you accepted the role, obviously there were incredibly hard physical demands upon you, learning the language, just obviously the climate you were going to be working in. Talk about your preparation for the role and what it took from you.
Well, initially I just said, all right, here's a script. I read it, and okay, this is what you do with any script, and I start researching it. And this one was right to the Bible. But what was amazing is that everybody wants resurrection, nobody wants suffering. But can you have the gold medal without suffering? Mm-hmm. Can you does a man, when he's sitting there and his country's flag is going up and he's got a gold medal around his neck and he's weeping, is he going, I'm crying because Nike just called and has given me a $30 million contract? That must be it. Yeah. Or is it that I see the sacrifice, I see my family suffering, I see them you're joined to a lot of other people that have given so much into your country and to people that have given their life for God and paying with their own blood, and you hear the Star-Spangled Banner. Much the same way, in this piece, I wanted this thing to transcend. If I'm going to do this movie, I don't want to do the passion of mediocrity. Yeah. Or something that is a little pagan, that he wasn't handed over by his own, that only the Romans were so responsible. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it day after day, that we all are part of handing Christ over when we contribute to sin, especially when we betray him and we are Christians. Mm-hmm. But Jesus then continues to tell us to get back up, to try, to keep going.
Mm-hmm. What is it about Jim Caviezel's testimony that resonates so well with so many people? We have a video here. It's already around 750,000 views, and actually this isn't the only one out there. There's actually several out there. And something that seems to be very interesting about Jim Caviezel is he doesn't have the pride that you find with a lot of Hollywood actors, and I think he has some traits that are not so common among Christians, sort of a humility that we would expect most Christians to have, but maybe it's something that a lot of Christians are trying to work towards. One thing I noticed is that whenever Jim is complimented by someone, he takes the compliment and turns it away from him, and he puts the focus back on Jesus. He actually he basically deflects the compliments, and a lot of Hollywood actors don't do that. They usually they'll take the compliment, they'll just have like a little smile, or and then they'll just kind of suck it in a little bit. Uh, Jim actually deflects it and points instead towards Jesus, and then also points to how he's not worthy. And I think it's kind of interesting how he does that. You don't see very many people do that at all, actually. Usually when someone compliments someone, they don't do that. So I think that's actually a really interesting trait he has. And let's see if I can find an example here to show you. Okay, in this example, it's slightly different, but it's the same kind of idea. Now, with this pastor, he is sort of obviously a little bit starstruck, and he's kind of laughing along with how Jim Caviezel is explaining things, but Jim doesn't like it, and you're going to notice that in a second here, in how he almost always deflects any type of compliment, even if it's someone that's just a little excited or starstruck or whatever it is. You're going to see it here. Let me play this.
In the middle of the shoot, because these guys don't speak English and we don't speak Italian, so there's a translation problem. So he's telling Caridi, his assistant, to translate to them, to tell him to hit Jim like baseball, like a pitcher in a baseball game. And they're like, what? They don't play baseball. And he's like, cricket. So they went back here and took a run like this. And I'm sitting here like that, and they hit the metal plank, except with that momentum, the whip went over, and 14-inch gash on my back. And I went right down, like in a football game where you get the wind knocked out of you.
Why, did it hurt or something? Is that why you... I mean...
No, I saw God.
Well, let's roll the clip. Let's talk a little bit about the whipping, and we're gonna just walk through it a little bit. Let's roll that. Maybe we could go back just slightly.
Sure.
I'm kind of just thinking to myself, you're hearing them flexing the bows in the back. What's going through your mind at that point?
At that point, I'm thinking about all my sins. The whole part was, I'm not worthy to play this role.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to be in. I told a friend of mine that, and, he says, well, Jim, God doesn't always choose the best. But he chose you. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So, I was in a place of deep, just like in the zone.
Yeah.
And
You can see there kind of how he deflected it. He, obviously this pastor's trying to get comfortable with him and sort of is starstruck, and he's kind of, laughing along, trying to make it fun. But Jim Caviezel turns it very serious and talks about the fact, and I'm sure that's, if anybody plays that role and they're very serious about their faith, they're going to be thinking about their sins, and they're going to be thinking about how they're not worthy to play this role. So, that's really a sign of him being a genuine Christian, which, it's really amazing to see someone in Hollywood with this type of attitude, with all the money and fame and everything thrown at you. It's, it's kind of like when Jesus talks about the rich man going through the eye of a needle, it's kind of thing, I think he would be one of those people that really seems to understand God and knows Jesus. And you can see how it can be very serious of a topic, especially considering this is a whipping. I kind of wondered if this pastor had seen the whipping part, because that part was really disturbing in the movie. When I watched it, I was just like, what in the world? This is crazy. Because they're like, really, they just got this demonic grin on them when they're whipping him. And just, it's just really disturbing to watch that part of the movie. If you haven't seen that movie, I recommend you see it. It's a very good movie, a very moving movie to watch. about Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Okay, check this part out. This is pretty crazy.
Tremendous. Tremendous.
If you want to look at it this way, the problem I see right now is the fact that many Christians have immersed themselves in paganism. They want to be cool to their Christian or pagan friends by being a little pagan so they can be cool. There's nothing cool in this. The only thing lacking in you is that you don't want to be holy. Well, here's what will happen. We'll all come to task one day, and you either get a chance to lay it down for Jesus, or you'll get to deny him. But it will come in our generation this way. There are many things that you see on the horizon right now where you're going to have to make a choice. You will have to make a choice. I hear people all the time in Hollywood, they say, you know what? My agent just died. And he was so embarrassed by his death, he didn't want anybody coming in because it was very hard for those people to watch. Well, guess what? Suck it up. We need Christians to go look death in the face and understand the next point, to encourage these people to understand that eternity awaits them. We're all going to die, the first death. Hopefully not the second. God never sends a man to hell. People choose this place.
Yeah.
Our democracy cannot be sustained without a shared commitment to certain moral truths about the human person and the human community. The basic question before a democratic society is this: how ought we to live together? And seeking an answer to this question, can society exclude moral truth and moral reasoning? Set yourselves apart from this corrupt generation, my brothers and sisters. You weren't made to fit in. You were born to stand out.
That's right. Tremendous.
Yeah, I like this. Actually, behind me, I have one of the shows that he's been on not too long ago called Person of Interest, which is very interesting because it talks all about the NSA basically having access to all people's data and information, and a supercomputer that basically is figuring out what they need to do. What is the most strategic thing that they need to work on? That's a big problem in society, and all the little things were just kind of left to the wayside. I don't want to explain the whole show, but basically Jim Caviezel plays as a guy solving some of the small problems that this supercomputer comes up with that the government doesn't really care about. They only care about the big things like, terrorist attacks and such. All these little crimes is the ones that Jim Caviezel's dealing with in the show. And the show goes through all manner of stuff that you see in a lot of these conspiracy theories about microchipping, just everything, New World Order elites. It's a pretty amazing show, and he played in it, which shows, he has a good grasp of what's going on and where our country is going, where this world is going, and he understands that, the time is short, the future is not going to look very good. There's going to be a time when we're going to have to stand for our faith. And it's going to be at the end of potentially a sword in some cases for some Christians. It could be at the end of whatever. You can see how the culture is going. You have this transhumanism, transgenderism. You have all this craziness. The government trying to use political correctness to stifle free speech, to stifle our freedoms, and to bring about their agenda. And it's going pretty quick. And you just look at Europe and you can see just how far it's gone. And America is next on the slate, of course, for these elites. So I think he is definitely in the know with all this type of stuff. He seems to be a very knowledgeable Christian, and seems to be a very spiritual person as well. From what I can tell, he seems to be very genuine in many respects. And I wish more Christians would actually understand these things. And he's a good example of how to live. Maybe because of this movie he was in, playing Jesus, he really reflected a lot on how he is perceived in public and how he wants to have a good testimony before men, and how to live a good life. And of course, he doesn't think high of himself either, which is very good, especially for someone who has the money and the fame. And I'm sure he probably doesn't just use that money for ridiculous stuff. He probably actually gives a lot of it away. I wouldn't even doubt it. I don't know much about him, and I know he's not super rich like a lot of these other actors because he doesn't get all the A movies like Tom Cruise and all these other ones. But it's interesting, though, to see someone in Hollywood with this attitude and with this type of knowledge, and he still does do work. God obviously works in mysterious ways and is able to bring about whatever in his life. So, at any rate, I'll have a link in the description. Probably link it up also on the video to his full testimony so you can check it out. This last part I played here was actually a clip from Round Saturn's Eye. He took a little clip from the entire testimony as well. But there's a full testimony. I'll link that up, which is about almost 30 minutes long. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please share it with others, like and subscribe. Also, check out our forums and make sure to get a copy of the 10 ebook collection on Freemasonry so you can truly understand and know your enemy. Do you see what the elite are doing?